Hello everyone, it is Reese here, and you join me for my latest roundup video. And in this one, I'm going to be talking about all the films that I watched, all the new watches, I should say, in March of 2026. And as you see on my slide, it was not a very busy month on film grounds. I sort of only watched 11 new films. Um, Life sometimes gets in the way. What can you do? On my 1001 film challenge, or the 1259 challenge as it looks at the moment, I added 4 films to the list this month. Um, so there's a mixture, as always, there's a mixture, and so I'm going to run through them all. I'm going to do a little bit of a little summary, little mini reviews of them if I've got stuff to say. Very much. And as you see, on the bottom of the slide there's a link to my letterbox. And if you want to join me on this quest and stay up to date with all the films that I watch, then please do follow me on Letterboxd. The first film of the month, Little Caesar, directed by Mervyn LeRoy, starring Edward G. Robinson as Little Caesar, who is a small-time criminal who essentially rises through the ranks of organised crime and eventually sort of takes the lead of a criminal organisation. However, his relationship with a former friend and his past catch up with him, and it goes the way that all these films tend to go. Now, I really enjoyed this film. This was essentially one of sort of the first gangster films, as we would understand gangster films nowadays. And it was really, really tense. Lots of wonderful tense sequences in which the Caesar character decides to sort of go against orders and wipe out a sort of particularly influential politician. I quite liked as well sort of some sequences in which the character plays with Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who plays Joe, his friend. There are scenes in which the character sort of has confrontations with him as he rises through the ranks, and Joe sort of wants to sort of essentially leave a life of crime, and that tension there really underpins quite a number of it underpins a lot of the conflict in the film. This is one I would greatly recommend. So this was a film that was made pre-code, and so it's perhaps a little more violent and sort of unexpectedly brutal, especially with the ending, than you might expect a film of this period to be. I'm aware that both Scarface and The Public Enemy are both on my list as well, and those are films that also are in this world of sort of essentially codifying what gangster films mean. I'm yet to watch those. I may watch those sort of soon based on the strength of this film. But The Little Caesar was an excellent start to the month. Let's leave ahead a week, and I watched this film, The House on Haunted Grounds. So this is a newer release, and it is kind of, essentially speaking, a run-of-the-mill found footage horror. So directed by Brendan Rudnicki. The premise is that there's this house where there's sort of a history of murder, and sort of a paranormal YouTube channel goes to it and sort of investigates, and as you may expect, as is the way with these films, triggers all sorts of paranormal activity. It's effective in points. There's a bizarre through line with sort of a member of the team who's sort of in a van, and we cut to him far too often. That's a character that could have been sort of cut essentially without doing any damage to the film. And I often found a lot of the tension diffused by just sort of cutting to this guy looking at sort of action with sort of a worried expression on his face. As paranormal sort of films go, you could do worse. It's kind of run-of-the-mill stuff. I don't know. I have massive amounts more to say than that. On the subject of other sort of horror films, Wish Upon, 2017. This stars Joey King as a girl who finds a magic box and she gets wishes from it. This again is kind of there's a film that I sort of I'd seen before based on one of the wishes where sort of there's a sort of an infection thing in a character's face. I didn't realise it was from this film. this, so I'd seen that, at which, so I'd known that, I knew the film before that. I didn't overly love the film though. I sort of found it very hard to empathise with the Joe King character, and yes, it's sort of, if you want a wish film, if you want a sort of magic film, my recommendation is the criminally underrated Wishmaster film, which is kind of a film that is a fun sort of slashery thing. It's from 1927, Robert Kurtzman and Andrew Divoff as a djinn. Lots of a wealth of sort of horror royalty in it. I think the film is criminally underrated outside of horror circles, but I would recommend that as sort of the wish film. This one I struggled with because although some of the wishes are a bit nasty, it was quite hard to engage with the characters in this. Hoppers, I'm watching a new Pixar film, and loved it. This was really good fun. The premise of the film, there's sort of a girl in it who is kind of a sort of an eco-activist, after has always been an eco-activist throughout her life, and sort of is fighting the local mayor who wants to erect a bridge at the site of a pond. But all the animals have gone due to the sort of human activity. She discovers at her university that the scientists she works with have devised sort of devices, little robot animals, which they call hoppers, in which their personality can be implanted into the robot and they can interact with animals. She steals the hopper and takes the form of a beaver and decides to try and save the animals using the technology. It is excellent fun. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I've laughed quite so much at any Pixar film. There's sort of a wonderful through line of sort of eco-consciousness, as you'd probably expect. But it's really, really funny. There's a wonderful dynamic between the lead character, Mabel, and the king of the mammals, a beaver named George, played by Bobby Moynihan, who is one of the sort of the best characters that have come out of Pixar in their sort of recent run. John Hammer's Mayor Jerry as well is a highlight. I won't say anything about the villain, but this might be one of Pixar's best villains for a while as well. So, firing on all cylinders, the film looks stunning, greatly entertaining. Mark Mothersbaugh's score is fantastic. There are some excellent set pieces here. Sort of an attempted, I don't know how to say it in a way that won't spoil. A desire to kill a particular person executed in a way that is surreally fun. Yes, this I would recommend. This was an excellent film. Pixar very much, if they're sort of still making them like this, then yeah, what more can you say? Let's go to something a bit rubbish. Wickedness, a sort of film very, very much drawing on the sort of trying to. It's one of those sort of cheap mockbuster films. Although interestingly, the film sort of draws more on both the Harry Potter franchise and, for some reason, Joker Folie à Deux. It's a tale of two sisters, and sort of the Elphaba-inspired sister escapes from her mental asylum and begins enacting sort of evil. Yeah, very, very little to recommend in this one, in truth. It feels cheap. It's really poorly acted. There's not too much to say here. I normally look for the best in them, but I was really, really bored with this one. I've got to be honest with you. Another film off my list, the second film off my list this month after Little Caesar, The Fireman's Ball. So this is a Czech film from 1967, directed by Milos Forman, who we may know in a sort of Anglophone context more for having directed films such as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Amadeus, Ragtime. This is a film set during sort of the annual ball of sort of a fire department in a small town. But there is a sort of a lot of corruption in the local community. Things are being stolen from sort of the raffle table. they're this kind of upset about who should win and enter a beauty pageant. Um, the film's quite an entertaining little slice of parochial life, but it also sort of quite an effective parody of kind of communism and sort of the corruption inherent in sort of communities like that. It's really funny, really entertaining. I greatly enjoyed it, and I understand that not many of the actors were sort of actual sort of professional actors. It was largely sort of firefighters and that, from the sort of station themselves. Um, so this is one that I sort of nothing about at all. I don't know. I've ever seen a Czech film. It is a case. So this was a film that was aligned with the Czechoslovak New Wave as well, but I don't know too much about that. You'll find some better scholars than I to tell you about that. This, yes, a very entertaining film, entertaining in its own right, and despite Foreman's kind of a commentary, that the film may not perhaps be an allegory or not, it works really well. It really sort of captures some of those contradictions that underpin and sort of skewed some of these systems. I think would be a fair way to say it. Move on to another film on my list. The Bitter Tea of General Yen. So this is another pre-code film. I wasn't deliberately trying to watch pre-code films, but there you go. Directed by all people, by Frank Capra of all people, starring Barbara Stanek as a American missionary who sort of is caught up in a sort of a battle during the Chinese Civil War, and is saved by a Chinese warlord, the titular General Yen, who essentially falls in love with her and tries to win her around. She fights the attraction and sort of essentially is sort of against him, but then sort of refuses to leave him when his fortune turns. This was a film. It was a mixed film in truth. So this film is on the list, and it's one of the first films in Hollywood to deal openly with kind of the idea of sexual attraction between different races. It's kind of a Hollywood-style Chinese person in that it's not a Chinese person; it's an actor wearing makeup. I think the guy was Swedish, Niels Aster. So it's kind of a romance and a kind of a weird war picture almost, and neither element particularly convinces, I would say. There's sort of a whole plot line of sort of treachery and sort of one of the maids being a secret spy for the other Chinese side and stuff like that. And then a random sort of American guy who sort of remains in the General Yen's palace as a kind of financial advisor. It is a picture, I believe it was adapted from a book at the time. Essentially, Frank Capra chose it because he wanted to win an Oscar, or wanted to at least be nominated for one. That was not something that happened for this film. It is slightly wishy-washy and kind of Orientalist in a way that doesn't overly land, I would say. This is my review of the film. So sort of it was destroyed at the time. It really bombed. But I believe that sort of in subsequent years, it has been much more kindly received. And sort of, although it's easy to criticise for kind of sort of iffy kind of racial, iffy depictions of race and whatnot, we are sort of viewing it from present day eyes, and it's quite easy to do that, I would say. I sort of look at the film more as I wasn't overly engaged by it, but that is not inherently a problem in itself. Later that night, I know, 2 film day, I watched that one in the morning, I watched this one in the night, Last Night on Earth. And so this is a film that, broadly speaking, does what it says on the tin, right? There is a couple, essentially, in some sort of ambiguous present day time, we're aware that Earth is going to be destroyed by an asteroid. There is this couple that want to spend their last days together in the mountains, but they sort of keep interacting with people. who sort of essentially are behaving as if society is breaking down. This is a film. It's a weird film because it posits itself sort of in part as kind of a sort of philosophical treatise on what would you do if you know that everything is going to end. The couple's interactions with the as a character played by Dee Wallace, who sort of essentially has a community and all that, run with this, and sort of the bouncing back and forth between their lives, as things are looking to end, and sort of the present day, the sort of literal last day, is interesting. But then for some reason it introduces a random sort of thriller element of sort of the couple come across a another couple who are kind of murderous in intent, and for some reason decide that sort of they want to kill them and chase them and all that. And it's a weird, really weird call because that introduces sort of an element of the film that doesn't work. I'd much rather kind of the film that is set up to be, and then sort of this sort of shift in genre in the last third really kind of changes the tone in a way that doesn't overly land. And this is my view anyhow. I believe sort of reviews and other reviews have kind of said similar things in truth. So yes, that's not enough. Again, sort of when it works, it works. And elements of it certainly don't. My last film from the list, and interestingly, another pre-code film. I wasn't planning that one. I did a musical comedy, starring Maurice Chevalier as a tailor who sort of, through a sort of circumstances, leads a noblewoman to think that he is a nobleman. It's a musical too, music by Rodgers and Hart. The famous song Mimi is from this film, and there's a song sort of Isn't It Romantic that you may know as well. This is effectively kind of your sort of typical class comedy, as it were, and mixed up with the musical genre and the sort of very entertaining and engaging presence of Chevalier as the lead. Some of the songs I don't overly love. Some are very on the nose. There's a song entitled "The Son of a Gun is Nothing But a Tailor" that really kind of sort of go, really sort of so on the nose, as to be almost pointless, I think. Apparently there were two other songs written for the film, and they have been lost. They were deleted before the film was released, as I understand. I'm happy to be corrected on that. There are some excellent shots in this sort of the opening shot where Paris sort of comes alive is fantastic. When Chevalier decides to sort of protect a deer from sort of the rest of the noblemen. Fantastic. I sort of had fun with this. So the film was somewhat dismissed by critics. So it was directed by a guy called Ruben Mamouillon. I may not be pronouncing that 100% right, but it's been dismissed and started as a parody of sort of other Paramount directors at the time. Other critics are less brutal on it. This is a good fun musical. Again, I was kind of recommended as yeah, good and fun, and yeah, I can't give you much more than that. They Will Kill You. So this was an Odeon Scream Unseen, and I love a good Odeon Scream or Scream Unseen. This film stars Zazie Beetz, who is sort of eminently, it's always enjoyable, as a woman who goes to a hotel on the search for her missing sister. It's a hotel, some sort of fancy building, sorry, and discovers essentially, she learns that people in the hotel like to sacrifice people. I won't go into it too much. There is elements of this that are really quite in common with another film that was released later that same week, of which I watched as my last film of the month. This is a film that is kind of half that film. Well, half Ready or Not 2 really. It sort of is ticking similar boxes. But it is also a what am I saying? It's also really sort of Kill Bill inspired. So way. Some of the cinematography in it is gorgeous. And it also has a lot of air of kind of classic Sam Raimi, some sort of quite visceral gore effects and comedy stylings. And there's one scene in particular, say, where the Zazuki's character is kind of almost pursued by an eyeball. And there are, as I say, so it does some stuff that is not overly. Um, so Patricia Arquette is quite an interesting lead. Um, Although she's never, her accent seems to sort of ebb and flow about whether it wants to be Irish or not. Um, some of the villainous sort of rich people characters, played by actors like Tom Felton, Heather Graham, etc. The film essentially doesn't really give much backstory to them. There's a bit of a. I would have liked to have seen more of them. Some kind of ropey-ish CGI stuff in the end as well, which I thought was really fun. But I did hear people in the cinema I was in sort of chuckling at it. Yeah, it kind of does the job. I don't even say more than that. It does the job. And it's fun, you know. It's quite a breezy, fun, and very frantic watch. I would recommend. I would very much recommend. However, in sort of if you're in terms of sort of if you're going to the cinema, you could have quite an effective sort of eat the rich double bill, as it were. And by also watching Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, and this is my last watch of the month. So the film picks up immediately where the last one ended. Grace, Samara Weaving's character, is taken to hospital, and there she reunites with her estranged sister, Faith, played by Catherine Newton. However, in surviving the game in the first film, she has now triggered a game in this film. But the winner here essentially inherits the entire world. Cue a number of set pieces of rich people pursuing Grace, all the sort of the fun comedy violence that came in the first film. If you like the first one, you're going to like this. I like the first film. I liked this. Very little else to say than that. So Weaving is really compelling as always, and Newton as her sister is sort of an excellent foil. Really, really good. I like the sort of the cast of characters. So Elijah Wood appears as the lawyer for Mr. the Bail. Some of the key names: Sarah Michelle Gellar and Sean Hattosi as siblings. Some of the other rich characters don't get too much development. There is a character that is so clearly meant to be Melissa Barrera, but is not. So yeah, some really, really fun set pieces again, and the film sort of ticks all the boxes that you would want if you'd seen the first one. I would recommend go see the first one, then go see this one. I like this, and as you may be aware, I have written about game horror. I'll link my piece below, in which I talk about the first Ready or Not. I think there's more to say here. I might do a video on this film, and if there's demand, do comment below. Yeah, no. Have a fun and eat the Richie night with They Will Kill You and Ready or Not 2, and would be my advice. And so there we go, my summaries, reviews, etc. of everything that I watched in March. Thank you very, very much for watching. Please do comment below what is an interesting new film, what's a new film you've really enjoyed, and that you've seen this month. I'd love to hear from you all and love to know what sort of things you guys are seeing. Thank you so much for watching. Comment below if there's any videos you'd like me to make. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to ring the bell so you know when there is new content coming. Thank you very, very much, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.